All right, Jimmy Ott and Paul Stone talking some college football. Let's get right into it with the best bets. But before I do that, I am in a great mood today, Mr. Paul Stone, because going to T-Town, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and LSU. Go visit my son, hang out. Great downtown area in a great atmosphere. Some of my best memories are in both of those stadiums, at Bryant-Denny and at Tiger Stadium, between these two rivals. Now, they won't play every year. They'll play every other year because they couldn't give three heavies to Alabama. You know they're going to play Auburn and Tennessee, but LSU they will only play every other year. But yeah, one time the place was shaking. I mean, it was been a lot of fun. Wish they had more at stake in this game, but we will see as we head to it. Let's go from to the Big Ten, Paul. The first pick that you're looking at, and a lot of times you send me a pick. I do a little research and I can kind of smell what you're cooking. I don't know what you got up your sleeve on this one, Paul. But anyway, Rutgers at home, a picket against Maryland. Thank God for Whiskey and Purdue because that's the only conference wins for these two teams. Combined, they are 2-9 in Big Ten play. In Maryland, boy, Paul and I went head up in that one, 4.5, and I was cruising with 4-0, but three straight fourth quarter blown leads by the Maryland Terrapins. And then the last one where they got waxed. Led 3-0 against Indiana, but then got waxed. Rutgers, same kind of thing. Their only win is against Purdue in league play. So what's going on with the Scarlet Knights here at home against Maryland?
Well, first of all, Jimmy, this game certainly this one in East Piscataway not nearly as big of a game as even though the stakes are not quite as high in LSU and Alabama. You're going to a little more prominent game there in Tuscaloosa and have a great time. But the money's just as green in East Piscataway, so we'll see how it goes. But these two teams, they feasted on friendly non-conference schedules, to put it mildly. Got off to good starts. They go into the Big Ten part of their schedule and found the going a little tougher. Rutgers, as you mentioned, they got their first victory at Purdue, 27-24, a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago now. There on the road as a small underdog. And then Maryland, way back on September 20th, they upset Wisconsin 27-10 before we kind of found out who Wisconsin was as a 10.5-point road underdog. Went to 4-0 on the season, did Maryland. They were off the next week after that victory over Wisconsin, but for 2 consecutive weeks, they actually received votes in the AP poll, but they have now lost their last 4 games. As you also mentioned, 3 of them very competitive, 3 of those 4 losses by 4 points or fewer. So Maryland has been competitive for the most part. You look at this Rutgers team, though, and their schedule after hosting Maryland this week, they'll be off next week, and then they'll just have 2 regular season games remaining after this weekend. They go to Ohio State, and then they host Penn State. And despite the Nittany Lions' immense struggles this season, this game this weekend against Maryland represents Rutgers' best opportunity the remainder of the season for another victory. So I think the Scarlet Knights are going to be all in. They've got a solid passing attack led by, not very good defensively. Rutgers is not, but a solid passing attack led by their veteran quarterback, Ethan Kaliak-Manis. Kaliak-Manis is thrown for almost 2,500 yards this season, and he threw for 330 yards or more against 3 Big Ten opponents this year, those being Iowa, Washington, and Purdue. Maryland, statistically, they rank fairly high in most passing defense statistical categories. But when you look at their schedule, they haven't exactly played who's who of prolific passing attacks, to put it mildly there. This game actually made Rutgers -3. Rutgers opened at -2 at least one book on Sunday afternoon. So we have seen some Maryland money arrive to get this game now to pick. And we're just picking the winner here. And I think it's going to be Rutgers. I like the Scarlet Knights that pick them over the Terrapins Saturday in East Piscataway.
Yeah, you mentioned the schedules, and that's why, I mean, last year when Rutgers avoided the Big Four out of the Big Ten, they didn't play Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, or Penn State last year. Didn't play any of them. So we went over, and they got there. And this year went under because they played 3 of those 4 this year. On the other hand, Maryland only played 1 of those. And so I figured they would win their non-conference games, which they did, and then they would be in games. And they've been in games boy, it's getting a little close now to that 4.5. That would be a tough one to go 4-0 and 4.5 and finish with 8 straight losses. Log into your Bet Rivers app each week to opt into a 3-pack of college football profit boost, including a live boost, same game parlay boost, and a boost to use however you please. See the app or website for more details. Let's go to Auburn up. Well, I took my hand off the stove for a little bit after Auburn kept losing those tough beats after tough beats after tough beats, and well, I snuck one in against Arkansas. I laid off last week against Kentucky, but an offensive oriented coach gets 3 at home against Kentucky. So Hugh Freeze now is the latest coach. 4 of them now gone from the SEC after all 16 coaches survived last year. We knew that was an outlier. Auburn is catching 6.5 at Vandy, but it's not so much that I'm high on Ashton Daniels, the starter for DJ Durkin. He started for Jackson Arnold. It was lukewarm, maybe even a decline in level of play. And that's with Jackson Arnold having a rough year. But he will start. But I could see a scenario where Daniels starts and then Arnold comes off the bench. I could see a scenario unfolding there. The thing I'm looking at here is Vanderbilt. And I know Vanderbilt. It's like, when the LSU fans, but it happened against Vanderbilt. Well, Vanderbilt's way better. Vanderbilt's probably not going to go back to the low level that they were, that they have their boosters who have money, that it have them excited and are going to contribute and make it much more of a level playing field than it's been for the last 40 or 50 years in the SEC. But damn it. I mean, emotional win against LSU was in the top 10 at that time, down to the wire. Had to stop the guy in a Hail Mary at the half-yard line. I mean, full effort for 60 minutes. And then when it was a brutal spot in Austin, they're down 34-6. Give them credit. I mean, they come to the closing line. They backdoored it. They're not going to quit. I know that. But every game is 60 minutes. There's no exhale spots. And then they have to play an Auburn team's got a pretty good roster. I think it's going to be another tight one for Vanderbilt. I'll take Auburn plus 6.5. I just can't get my hand off that stove with the Auburn Tigers, Paul.
Yeah, we've talked about it on the podcast. These teams, when they fire their coach this year, I think it was like 6-0, and maybe there's been a loss against the spread in the last week or so. But I think it started 6-0. Teams with an interim coach in their first game after firing their previous coach had performed very well against the point spread. And of course, Auburn will be going up against Vanderbilt this week with their interim coach DJ Durkin. This is the third time Vanderbilt's been a favorite this year in SEC play. They were a 1.5-point favorite over LSU, a field goal favorite over Missouri. Won both those games, covered both, but the line just keeps going up against comparable teams, and 6.5 against a team like Auburn that has, obviously struggles on offense, but very, very good defensively. I mean, this is still a top 25, maybe even a top 20 caliber defense that Auburn's putting on the field. So it seems like, the number is a little bit higher than I anticipated. Durkin, might get that bump that some of these these interim coaches have got. And by the way, just looked it up to be sure, but I think yesterday or the day before, but yesterday Durkin announced that Ashton Daniels will get the start against Vanderbilt. And I think, he had not played a whole lot, obviously, with Jackson Arnold being the starter before last weekend. And I think he'll represent some type of an upgrade. So he might play better this week, but man, it's got to be Auburn or nothing. The points just get a little bit out of hand with a talented Vanderbilt team, but one not accustomed to laying the wood in SEC play.
Now, Virginia Tech played Wofford after they lost to Old Dominion, and they made a change there. So that's a non-bowl team. They did win, though, their next game on the road, beat NC State outright. Even Oklahoma State, who's had a rough season, covered the 21 against Baylor when they made the switch. So Florida covered against Georgia, against the with the Gunnar Stockton kneel down. So yeah, it's the interim coaches, and we know about the UCLA bump as well. So yeah, it's definitely proven to be a little bit of just an interim boost. Usually short term, but yeah, there is no question about that. Players who place a qualifying same game parlay of at least $10 on eligible NFL or NCAA football games will receive one standard entry into the weekly Squares game. Winning standard squares will be awarded a prize of a $20 bonus bet. See the app or website for more details. Let's get to one of my picks now. And let's go to, I'm sorry, one of your picks now. We'll go to the Big 12 out in Tucson, Arizona. Wildcats 4.5-point favorites over the visiting Jayhawks. Kansas on an 0-3 ATS run. Arizona blew out Colorado at Boulder after two heartbreaking losses. Those two losses to Houston and BYU, those are two teams that combined records of 15-2. And I mean, had BYU beat, and right there with Houston. So Daniels and Fafita, these two quarterbacks have combined for a total passing and rushing, combined 47 total touchdowns. They can move the football. In the desert here, bear down, Arizona 4.5.
Yeah, really, I don't have any advanced metrics or unique bits of statistical information on this one per se, but it's just kind of the basic eye test. Arizona has played really well at home, 4-1 on their home field this year. You mentioned the BYU game; they led BYU, seventh-ranked BYU, by 10 points early in the fourth quarter before the Cougars rallied for that 37-27 or 33 rather to 27 victory over Arizona. There in double overtime. Tough loss for them. And while Arizona has played really well at home this year, Kansas has been something less than stellar, you might say, on the road. Lost to Missouri and Texas Tech by a combined 36 points, and then needed to rally in the second half to defeat Central Florida there in Orlando, 27-20. You talked about Arizona's veteran quarterback, Noah Fafita. Last year threw 12 interceptions, had a pretty rough year, but he steadied the ship so far this season, thrown for 2,042 yards through the season's first 8 games. Has completed 65% of his throws, averaging 8 yards an attempt and 21 touchdowns against 4 interceptions. I think Arizona is going to achieve bowl eligibility with this victory, this weekend. They're 5-3 entering, Kansas 5-4, so both playing for bowl eligibility. Another little tidbit: Kansas not all that good on the road, dating back to 2020 as an away underdog against the spread. Kansas 9-16, their last 25 as a road underdog. I think Arizona wins this one by a touchdown or more. Give them the Wildcats -4.5 over Kansas.
All right, Arizona at home against the Kansas Jayhawks should have a lot of points in that one. Let's move along to now one of my picks, and we'll go to the ACC. And look, man, my man Dabo Swinney's always whined, okay, but man, he's taking it to another level now. And not only that, I don't no hyperbole. I don't remember seeing him just getting after his players. He was getting after his defense in this game against Duke, man. That nobody could come up with a stop. You want to talk about a shootout? It's a shootout. And so it's one of my peeves. And listen, I love an analytics chart. We spit out analytics all the time, but game flow, what's happening in the game, dictates everything. You can't have the same chart for that Duke and Clemson game as you do for others. In a game where you're in the progress of amassing 999 total yards between the two teams, yeah, there's a reason you're going to have a higher percentage on fourth down. 8 for 8, the teams combined on fourth down in this one. So, no, this game flow, both coaches did a very good job of that. But it's all about Cade Klubnik, who finished strong. A lot of his yardage a lot of his production last year was, against weaker competition, but that's a lot of the college quarterbacks or college players, period, because there's such disparities in the level of the competition when it comes to different schedules. But Klubnik in that game against Texas was really, really good. And we all respect Texas defense, what they had last year. But this is his best game of the year. He had 385 yards passing. That's a high. 10.7 yards an attempt. That's a high. And just the second game this season with 0 turnovers. Dabo has one thing about him. He has kept his teams playing hard. They're playing hard. They're fighting. Mensa was equally as good, if not better. He was really special. The call at the end, there's some contact. You can't give the ref a chance. It didn't involve the play. It had no bearing on the play, so I wouldn't have called it. I didn't expect it to be called. but you can't give them a reason to throw the flag as well. I've seen much worse not called in college football. But Clemson minus 2.5 at home against Florida State. I think they're going to come to play. I like the form that Klubnik is in. And Florida State, look, I was wrong. I took the chump bait last week in the double digits in Doak Campbell against with Wake Forest. They got smoked 42-7. But I don't think Florida State has solved all their problems in Tallahassee. Taking a home team and a soft number here, minus 2.5.
Yeah, this line, infers that Florida State would be favored, say by a point or so on a neutral field. But you were kind of indicating on my Rutgers Maryland game that you were kind of scratching your head how I came up with it. I'm not scratching my head that you came up with Clemson. I just wouldn't bet either team. I'm certainly not faulting you. It's just, to me, it's just tough to know who's going to show up. Obviously, Klubnik's healthy again. And man, I still, like you said, that Texas playoff game in Austin against Texas last
Let me
year.
give you one more angle. See if you
Uh-huh.
buy. What about teams that could have easily covered, but didn't and didn't even win the game, affecting the line the next week? And that's Clemson. Clemson's
Yeah.
one play away. So that's another little ingredient I threw in there too.
Yeah, and they've lost back-to-back home games now. They lost to SMU before that. So I think both at home, SMU and Duke. So they're trying to avoid
Klubnik was out of that
was
one.
out in that game,
Yeah,
right? He
yeah.
didn't play, but they're trying to avoid their third straight home loss. So that might give you a little bit of impetus or a check mark on Clemson's side of the ledger as well, because you got to expect them to be a proud program. You don't want to be part of a team that comes into the year with national championship aspirations, and not only does the year fall apart, but you lose 3 games at home in a row, during the middle part of the season. But Florida State's hard to know what they're going to put out there. They played so well against Alabama in the opener and hadn't shown anything since until this past weekend when they just demolished Wake Forest. You weren't alone. I mean, a lot of people, and I even took a small position on Wake Forest, thought Wake Forest would keep it competitive, and Florida State rolls 42-7. So it's going to be interesting to see if Clemson shows up, if Florida State shows up, and what kind of ball game we have there on Saturday in Clemson, South Carolina.
Well, a lot of you here, Paul, and certainly knowledgeable college football handicapper, analyst, research is outstanding, and it starts way in the summertime. You may have not known that Paul is also a veteran, ultra marathon guide. I mean, there he frowns at real standard marathons. I mean, these ultra marathons are ridiculous. He'll go into some of that, but I don't know if many of you knew that Paul was also an author. He authors children's books, and he's releasing his latest children's book that coming out this Thanksgiving. Just a special stocking stuffer for all the kids. He's reading to his grandkids. It's called Gunner Stockton. He giveth, he taketh away. So, I mean, against Auburn, he's got a cushion. He goes down. They just take a snap and it's over. They can run a clock. Against Florida, did you think he was going in, Paul? Huh? I don't. I
was
needed
hoping
Florida.
I was hoping he was going in, but he made the unfortunately for those of us who had tickets on the Bulldogs, he did the right thing to win the game.
So, but here we go again with these Georgia Bulldogs. Another fight. I know one thing about Gunner Stockton. Okay, and I see why when Beck went down in the conference championship game, and you don't want your starting quarterback, you don't want to go in a playoff game and have a guy making his first start, which Stockton did against Notre Dame down in New Orleans. Okay, but they were not upset. I was in a sports book at the Beau Rivage in Biloxi, and a lot of Georgia fans were not upset when when he went down in a conference championship win against Texas. They survived that game, but Notre Dame certainly took advantage of Stockton's limitations of being a first-time starter. But man, he is at his best when that game's on the line. I mean, this son of a gun when they kind of go through the motions. They're on the ropes against Tennessee. Man, he makes that fourth down throw, beautiful 2-point conversion throw, makes the plays to win the game there. Against Auburn, making plays to win the game. They got a call. Absolutely, they got a call. But man, when it's on the line, he moved the ball. And then when Florida up 3 at the 19, 4th and 1, when they can't convert, what's he do? He takes it 81 yards right down the field for the game-winning touchdown. He is at his best. But I'm just still wondering about this Georgia team. well, we know, no wonder they're not the roster they used to be. The depth. It's football. You lose players. And what is really the new era of roster building, you would think, well, man, the haves got more money than the have-nots. The gap is just going to widen. Well, no. See, you got injuries, you're going to lose players. It's football. Those backups who are future NFL players, they're playing for immediate playing time somewhere else. And that's the thing that has really tightened it and created competitive balance. People in the Southeastern Conference don't want to hear about this crap growing the game. They like the whole way where they had the deck loaded. But you're looking at the total in this one. And I got to tell you, did we have Mississippi State last on our power ratings to start the season in the SEC? Jeff Lebby and this Mississippi State team is considerably better than what people expected this year.
Yeah, you talked about Gunnar Stockton, and going back to that SEC championship game against Texas last year. Carson Beck, as you mentioned, gets hurt. His career ends there in that SEC championship. His career at Georgia ends there in the SEC title game, and then in comes Gunnar Stockton. And man, I still can see that hit Andrew Mabuka laid on Stockton, and man, he just kept on ticking.
Yeah.
He had to play. They didn't have anybody else to. That had been critical, but he showed his toughness and he showed his grit, and that's kind of what he's about. But, I think early in the year, a lot of college football followers wondered, and perhaps even fairly, whether Gunnar Stockton could give Georgia a semblance of a passing game where that offense could function at a higher level. And, he's not the greatest passer, in college football today, but I think he's held his own. I think he's answered a lot of questions. He's thrown for almost 1,800 yards this year through 8 games. Completing 70% of his throws, 7.8 yards per attempt, 12 touchdowns, and only thrown 2 interceptions. So he's taking care of the ball. So I think he's done a really good job, and hopefully from Georgia's standpoint, we'll only get better next season. Mississippi State, I am looking at the total here. And when you're looking at a total, especially if you're looking at the over, or either side really, but you want to look at the pace of play. And Mississippi State is a team that plays up tempo. They average 76.1 plays per game, which ranks them ninth nationally in that category. And when you combine their opponents' plays per game, their games average a little over 149 plays per game, which I don't have statistics for the combined number of plays, but that's got to be near the very top in all of college football. So we're going to have a lot of offensive snaps Saturday in Starkville, and the Bulldogs are certainly they're maybe better on defense this year, but defense is not their thing. They're an offensive team. They average 29.5 points a game, almost 400 total yards a game, but they have had difficulty slowing down SEC opponents. And Jeff Lebby's 2 seasons there in Starkville under Lebby in the 13 conference games he's coached, they allow an average of 37.4 points per game. So they do give up a lot of points. Mississippi State in this game, a 9.5-point home underdog to Georgia. Over the past 2 seasons, when Mississippi State is cast as a home underdog in SEC play, 6-0 to the over. So that's pretty good past performance. Doesn't guarantee future results, but that's certainly something you want to have on your side to give you a higher probability. So they have played to the over when they've been cast as a home underdog in SEC play. You mentioned Georgia not being quite the roster that they were several years back during the quote unquote glory days under Kirby Smart, which I'm sure will return at some point. But I think a lot of that drop off is certainly on the defensive side of the ball, where they were so dominant for those 3 or 4 or 5 years there. So I think Mississippi State's going to score some points, and that's what you really are concerned about when you're taking overs with a fairly high total of 57. But I think, Mississippi State's probably good for 24 or more here. I like the over 57, Georgia, Mississippi State, Saturday in Starkville.
And that's usually the case. Even Florida teams, under Stoops, the last 25 years in the SEC, the super teams that come out, maybe the only exception that didn't have just these super defenses and those defensive linemen, the defensive front that could just run down skill guys for the opposing teams. I mean, I remember Florida defensive ends were running down Troy Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner for Ohio State, like he wasn't standing. I mean, the outlier has to be LSU's 19 team that was offensive oriented with guys like Burrow, Chase, and Jefferson, and all of those guys. Never seen a team that fair caught every every kickoff because they just didn't want to turn it over. And another one that stat that I love on that team was they at the end of the year, including the national championship game, all 11 plays, just 11 players played every snap on offense. Joe Burrow said, I got my guys. We don't need anything. We're going to score quick anyway. We don't need to substitute one bit. So there you go. Could be tricky. Could be tricky. That was a tough game for Georgia in Jacksonville and Mississippi State. But yeah, that the Georgia, they had about 3, 4, 5 year stretch where that defense was suffocating. They're good. They're a top 5 team in college football, if not just outside. Certainly top 10, maybe probably top 5, but they're not the dominant teams that we saw, when they had that run of back-to-back national championships. And then team that lost to Alabama in the final as well. All right, let's get to the final pick here, and let's go back to the well where we had some success last week. And North Carolina said that they were improving. They had 2 tough losses against Cal and Virginia, where they outplayed them. They combined for in the Cal Virginia losses 6 turnovers to 1. So they can steady that. That might be a big deal. So they take an early lead on Friday night at Syracuse, driving again, convert on 3rd down, a little short pass, right or just past midfield, fumble, scoop, and score. And here we go again. They're down 7-3. Belichick got the iPad and looked at the replay, and he was pissed. There is no doubt about it. Here's the thing. No matter what kind of scheme you're running, no matter kind of eye candy and pre-snap motion and personnel substitutions and dual threat quarterbacks and everything, you better be able to run the ball and stop the run. It starts there. And North Carolina has ran the ball and stopped the run. Check this out. The last 3 games after they got humiliated in Clemson, where Dabo throws the trick play for the 75-yard double pass touchdown to start the game. The last 3 games against the opponents, Cal, Virginia, and Syracuse, they have outrushed them by a combined 227 yards. That's 76 a game. That's a lot. Chapel Bill team is improving, man. I mean, plus 278 yards last week, and it's just, I mean, first-year coaches, man, they have been a punchline. And listen, Belichick has brought that upon himself with Air Jordan in her involvement in Chapel Hill. Okay, looks like a cash grab. Looks like just setting up his son, whatever it is. But man, we got to be fair. We evaluate first-year coaches on how their teams improve. Then this team is vastly improved, and it starts at the line of scrimmage, man. I'm going back to the well here. Laying a 7.5 makes me a little leery. There's no doubt, but Stanford making that coast-to-coast trip. I'm going with the trending team who, again, this is a team that's clearly playing above their overall resume. They're in a tremendous form right now. Give me North Carolina minus 7.5.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question this North Carolina team, not the same team that we saw on Labor Day against TCU. Like you indicated, the 2 games that they lost where they were, on the wrong side of the turnover category against Cal and Virginia, but they've covered their last 3 games now, could be on a 3-game win streak, and it's all about that defense. The offense has certainly got better, and I know Cal and going blank on who they on Syracuse. Not great offenses. Virginia's got a good offense, but those 3 teams, those last 3 games, they've only given up an average of 16 points a game. So they're playing a lot better defensively. They're clearly getting better. Stanford's one of their opponent this week, one of the worst Power 4 teams among all the Power 4, and it's got to be North Carolina or nothing. I think they're going to continue to ascend. That's the trajectory they're on right now. So not a good start by Belichick and company there in Chapel Hill, but they're clearly improving week by week.
Yeah, I mean, just there's no doubt about it. You made reference to the interim boost, Paul, earlier in the show, and let's give you the lay of the land Baylor covered plus 21 in their first. I'm sorry, Oklahoma State covered plus 21 against Baylor in the first game after Gundy. Florida last week plus 7.5 covers. Thank you, Gunnar Stockton. Again, I can't really, I can't wait for the release of Paul Stone's children's book on that. But anyway, covering at the genuflection at the 1 yard line. UCLA covered the 6.5 in Evanston against Northwestern. The first one after they fired Foster. Penn State after they fired Franklin squeezes into cover plus 3 in Iowa City. Arkansas, Petrino's first game, plus 10. They lose by 3 in Tennessee, the back door. And then the big upset was in Birmingham, plus 23.5, outright 31-24 winner for UAB after Trent Dilfer was launched there. The interim boost. So far, so good. So we'll have to see what happens with Auburn and LSU, both go on the road to Nashville and Tuscaloosa. For Paul Stone, I'm Jimmy Ott, each and every Tuesday and Thursday here on the College Sports Rush YouTube channel. Of course, our friends Doug Kazarian, Greg Waddell, and Troy Macker as well on the 10, their Wednesday and Friday. So 4 straight days of college football picks, analysis, angles, and information. Good luck to you this week. We will see you next Tuesday.